Long Way Home, Chapter 28. Vincent had expected to feel exhausted by the second week of putting double shifts to cover for the chief. He was a little surprised to find that wasn't the case. On the contrary, if one accepted the groggy portion of the morning between dragging himself out of bed and the sublime nectar of coffee anyway, he was invigorated. He supposed that not running to the bottle every pang of sorrow had something to do with that, but the old man was reluctant to credit his own strength on that front. There was a reason he jettisoned the temptation. He remembered to thank God for the extra strength to meet the task in private moments. The chief was moving into his second week of his recovery well enough, or so Vincent thought anyhow. The new splint that Andre had desired to have printed along with the sling and that Isis Magdalene had sewn for him seemed to help. In Vincent's view, it looked less cumbersome than the one that held his arm straight. It was heartbreaking for Vincent to see the chief accept help with a good grace for things that he just couldn't manage with his one arm. And he started putting the other kids along with him in the evenings to enjoy a movie together, or get a ball rolling on the when-we-get-home conversations, and, of course, thanking people for the little things they did for him and the ship. Despite that, on the other hand, Vincent had noticed that Jason was pacing a lot more, fidgeting with his good hand a lot more, and had developed a habit of needlessly adjusting the bandage over his lost eye. The kid was very clearly feeling pent up. The old man's memory dredged up a memory of when he'd broken his own leg as a boy around Jason's age, and he smiled at how he thought waiting for his bones to heal was the worst thing in the world at the time. Vi was getting used to Jason's temporary handicap, and had stopped looking like she might burst out into tears at the sight of him. Well, most of the time. Vincent still had to draw the girl into a comforting embrace when she saw Jason struggle to do some task one-handed, while she wrung her hands, tried in vain to keep her ears still, and chewed the inside of her cheek. The poor girl had a terribly hard time understanding that helping Jason to do something that he could do with little effort would hurt his feelings, but she still at least tried to understand. Vincent didn't think his explanation helped her much. He'd fumbled the words again. Andre knew her cousin, however, and she knew when it was necessary to help the kid whether he wanted it or not, and he knew her well enough to not take offense at her blunt assessments of his efforts. Vincent had tried to thank her for help in that direction, but she didn't seem to think she'd done anything remarkable, which in itself was a little funny to the old man. Still, though, Vincent sometimes caught the girl with a pained look across her face, and while she wasn't much one for hugs, a light pat on her shoulder seemed to be just as good for her. Isis Magdalene was, well, she was better. She started coming out of the girls' room to participate a little more. She listened to the instructions in the kitchen well, didn't balk at being the one to pick up Jason's slack and tidying up, and despite her continued grave formality, she seemed to be genuinely warming to the rest of the crew, mostly. Cadet still peered at her with suspicion that bordered on hostility, but Vincent guessed that trust that was hard to come by with that boy. The young lady wasn't deterred, though, and she responded well to Jason's efforts to include her. Cadet had been avoiding Vincent, though, probably because he was afraid that Vincent would change his mind about the boy's question, but that fear needed to be put to bed. So when the boy was on watch in the cockpit, Vincent went in, sat in his usual chair, and bluntly said, "All right, son. I guess I've given you enough time. Let's talk about what you asked me." Cadet narrowed his eyes and peered at Vincent, as if trying to read something in the old man's face and posture. Maybe not finding it, or maybe finding it, the boy asked, Did you change your mind?" "No," Vincent scoffed, and was pleased to note that the boy was sheepishly relieved. "But I wanted to talk to you anyhow." "Thought you said that you were bad at talking," Cadet sniped. "Ha!" Vincent barked. "That's true. But I know I need to sometimes anyway. Besides, it's not like you're a master of words either." "Yeah, well, I'm like 8 or 9. "You don't know which?" "I lost track after I ran it away. I'm not even sure when my hatch day is." Vincent drummed his fingers on the armrest and said, "Do you care about what day it is?" "I mean, when I went to school, I wished that I could get a party like the other kids," Cadet mumbled. "So you like to have one?" Vincent pressed. I guess so," Cadet muttered. "Do you know much about Catholicism?" Vincent asked suddenly. "Just that they build nice towers with lots of perches," Cadet answered with a little confusion. "Well, I am one. There's an important person in my faith who looked after orphans and runaways called St. Bosco, and his holy day is January the 31st. How does that sound as a hatch day to you?" My hatch day, big holy, is that good?" I think so." Then I like it." Vincent nodded to himself and then pressed on. "So why do you want me to be your dad?" Cadet sat in silence, filled only by the sound of the humming of the long-way systems. Vincent let him take his time thinking, and the boy began to squirm and fidget until he blurted out, "A while back I asked Jason what having a dad was like, and—" The boy suddenly trailed off and looked at anything but Vincent in obvious embarrassment. "Okay, but you decided I was like whatever he said?" Vincent asked, more than a little confused. Like any proud cipher, it was of course privately. Vincent wasn't quite sure he'd ever measure up to a man like Maxwell the Loyal George, and he was more than a little surprised the cadet thought that he did. Jason said, the boy said after a long beat of quiet, that his dad is strong and makes him want to be strong, that his dad makes time for him even when he has a job to do, and that his dad teaches how to do important stuff. I was thinking that for a long time Thanks, son, Vincent said when he realized that Cadet couldn't get the rest of the thought out. Cadet continued to fidget furtively until he stammered, "You said that I shouldn't want to be like you, but I don't think that's right. You do the right thing, even when it's small, even when it doesn't matter. Like answering my questions." "Kid," Vincent said, past a lump in his throat, "there's nothing I can think of that matters more than helping a boy find his way." The boy pressed, "You care. You care like other kids' dads care, and you work hard, and you know a lot of things, and, well, it seems, I guess, yeah." "Good enough, son, good enough." Jason very carefully stomped his way down the ladder into the engine room when Trundray was diligently working on dissecting the captured alien control yoke into its constituent components. She didn't look up from her work, which didn't bother Jason per se, so he began to pace in tight circles around the little engine room in an effort to extend his sprayed patience. "What's up, Jason?" she asked as she laid a set of tweezers and a precision screwdriver on the bench and swiveled on her stool to face him. "I feel like I'm going crazy, Tran," the boy blurted out, and his spacing only picked up in tempo as he spoke. "I'm going bent in the rudder, my lines are all snapping, and there's not even a gale to blame." "Has anybody offered you insult?" Trundray asked with a beginning of sympathetic affront in her voice and expression. Jason waved his hand as if to bat the notion away and answered, "It's that I can't get a good workout in. I feel like I'm, an overcharged power cell, and I'm about to blow or something." "Not every workout has to be pushing yourself to the limit, you know," Trundray gently scolded. Jason would have been running if he paced any faster, as he said, "I can't spend any time on the heavy bag. I can't bench press. I can't run." "Jason, touch the tips of your fingers to your thumb one at a time," Trundray suddenly ordered. "Huh? Just do it," she said with a valiant attempt at authority. Jason halted in puzzlement and did so, and suppressed a wince from thrashing on his face with each move. "Why?" he asked once he was completed the task. "Did it hurt?" "Aye, some. But you could do it. All four." "Aye. What are you getting at, Tran?" "Good," she answered. "You're heating. You should be doing low-impact cardio right now, and maybe a little with the free weights with your right arm. If you lose patience and try too early, you'll only re-break your arm." "Aye," Jason said, as he sighed a little. "But I feel so pent up, and even the stationary bike, I can't work up a good sweat without grabbing the handles and standing up on the pedals. Tran, I will not spoil what I could do for you on that day," Trundray insisted with something closer to authority in her voice. Of course, Jason agreed quickly, and placating palm towards her. "I'm racking my brains for some kind of exercise that I could do that wouldn't do that." "You could start with just turning the resistance on the bike up and not pedaling like a crazy person." "Well, that's boring," Jason complained with a desperate tinge to his voice. "By the time we translate to real space next week," she somberly said, "you should be able to safely lift weights again. I'd be happier if you could wait on using the punching bag for another 2 weeks. Jason let out a dissatisfied groan by the way of reply before he abruptly said, "Fine. Anything I can do to help the project take the enemy stuff?" Trandray's serious expression broke in a smirk as she told him, "You're terrible at naming things." "I'd like to hear you do better," Jason challenged. "Operation Ship Liberation?" "Fine, you win, Tran," Jason admitted with a matching smirk. Some 3 days later, Jason had cooled his head somewhat, even if his energy wasn't quite properly expended. Physically, anyway. He was expending more than a little energy, trying to understand groups with the similar ethical concern that Gideon George described in the book as peoples who reject the use of certain advanced technology for various reasons. Some of them didn't even use med scanners, and he knew well how useful that would have been. Baffling. It was something for his mind to gnaw on besides the dull, throbbing ache in his healing bones and wounds. Something to distract himself from the itch he couldn't scratch. He was just turning over whether one of the groups who only mostly rejected high-tech on account of it making life too easy when Vi nudged him where he lounged on the couch to read and think. Jason laid the tablet aside and sat up asking, "Am I in the way?" "No," she said as she clambered onto the sofa and snuggled up next to him. I wanted to know how you're doing. Things don't hurt as bad as they did, I think. Hard to tell, but I guess I noticed that I can move almost normally in some ways again without it hurting. So I guess that's good. Yeah, it's good, she said. But not what I was asking. Jason said, and let his right arm fall across his shoulders. I figure I'm okay. Jason, I don't know if I should say, she began hesitantly. Worry not, Isis Magdalene said from the door to the girl's cabin, which HFY's rounded ears twitched nervously. I'd thought to read him the poem once it was, I was merely by. I sought not to keep secrets, and I knew not that it troubled you so. Oh, I'm sorry, Vi began again, but Isis Magdalene cut her off with a gesture. I did say, worry not. I hold you blameless in this, the innocent noblewoman said, before she began. Stolen she was from teacher's care. Taken she was from friends held dear. Held she was in cold, cold fear. Kept she was, and all knew not where. Brave he was, though untested yet. Kind he was, though far from home. A fighter he was, he could not have known. Dutiful he was, and thus his path was set. Broken she was, awaiting doom or to be made free. Alone she was, for her friends perished all. Dreams glimmered hope that she should not fall. Delivered she was by one she prayed to see. Mighty he was to contend with the foe. Fearful he was, though his courage did hold sorrowful. He was, though he acted bold. Beautiful he was, though he shall never know. Feeble she was when fear assailed her. Weak was her courage in face of such a foe. Panicked she was, though it should only grow. Tears they fell that she was unable to stem. Kind he was, though he called to battle. Beaten he was, though he remained unbowed. Battered he was, though he stood proud. Slew he did, though it set his heart to rattle. And here we come to where I am troubled. I wish for 2 more verses, yet I cannot think of the proper words. Jason had listened to the poem in silence and didn't exactly know how to take it, but he always figured being polite was a safe bet. Thank you. Jason didn't know exactly why his throat had tightened and the words. It sounds, Vi said softly, it sounds sad. It is sad, Jason said, but not just sad. Nay, grief and gratitude are mingled in the writing of it, and chief in my thoughts is not what was lost, Isis Magdalene haltingly explained. That you see me and what I did, Jason said for her, that you see my little bit. Indeed, though I do not understand why you should once claim only your own deeds and call such deeds small. I thought to call you gallant or noble, but I fear that you may take offense. Jason had shifted and he seated a little and told her, about that, it's not like I mind, but exactly, but unless you mean nobly born, that might annoy me, but it's hard to explain. I just maybe, I don't know. I feel like I just try my best and like everybody else, but maybe I do something special? Maybe not, but I don't want to dwell on it. For my part, I call the deeds you accomplish for me are mighty and great indeed, Isis Magdalene insisted. Whether my deeds are great or small, as you put it, doesn't really matter. I do what I can, when I can, to push back the darkness, and that's really all there is to it, Jason said with perfect honesty. Whether it's snuggling on the couch, protecting my friends from wild animals, washing up the dishes, or going to war, I just do my bit. Think you nothing of adding honors and glory to your house and mine? Vi scoffed at a question. Jason's the kind of person that would get embarrassed by compliments, and you want to know what he thinks about glory? You make a good point, Isis Magdalene soberly agreed. The name, the family. It's important, sure, Jason said slowly, but I'm not all that worried over bringing honors and glory. It's more about not letting everyone down. Uphold the traditions. Be honorable. Don't shirk my duties. And if honors and such silliness happen to fall on my head, I figure out how I'll do my best to bear them. That sounds not dissimilar to the bearing of a scion of a noble house, the young lady said. You say that you would become wroth, to be thought nobly born. Well, technically he is, Vi helpfully told her. I was taught that the Republic has no nobles, Isis Magdalene said with a brow furrowed in thought. It doesn't, Jason said with a reproachful look towards Vi. But technically, and only technically, the George family is the imperial family of Romanova. Luckily, no one of us has gotten shoved on the throne. I think I could probably visit, so long as nobody mentions my name, but I don't want to risk it. Terrans are passing strange. Isis Magdalene sighed, and Jason only grinned at her. Old joints creaked and popped as Vincent stretched himself out after another uneventful watch. Cadet had already come in to relieve him, and Vincent was looking forward to a nice lunch. However much the immediate pleasure of how creatively Vi reconfigured the leftovers into new meals was enticing, however, tomorrow was on his mind. Tomorrow, a day that promised peril, a day that held hope. The chief wouldn't like it, the other kids wouldn't like it, however. Vincent had been scouring the information taken from the Ship of Horrors nigh on 2 months ago. He had been looking through it, and though it was anything but organized, he realized that the upcoming planetary stop held an opportunity. An opportunity, if grasped by daring, or maybe desperation, had the potential to save billions of lives. The chief wouldn't like it. Thinking of the chief, he was standing at a sink washing up dishes. Vincent coughed and sent the boy a disapproving look, which he answered with a crooked grin and said, "It's light duty, just to get my fingers bending right again." "You rehearsed that?" Vincent asked. The chief laughed at him and said, "Only if saying so to everyone else counts as rehearsing." Vincent gave the boy a sour grunt to show him what he thought of that, and slid into the dinette, where his lunch was waiting for him. Vincent didn't exactly know a good way to describe what sat before him, but it smelled good. "We translate to real space tomorrow," he said abruptly. I figured I had the count right," Jason said over his shoulder. "You're staying on board the long way with everyone else." The chief dropped a dish into the suds and spun in place, to waggle an accusing finger at Vincent. "Now wait a minute. You're going to need... You stay here and make sure nobody panics and does something we'll regret after a while I go do my work." Vincent insistently cut him off before asking, "Chief, you checking on where we're headed?" "Well," the boy said, chagrined, "I've had other things on my mind." "Yeah, I guess you have," Vincent flatly replied. "It's not uninhabited, they breed the grubs here. Christ on artillery." The chief swore venomously. "If I'm right, they do anyway. If I'm right, I can get the locations of all their grub breeding sites. And other, kid. I think that you have to try to get more info. You know what to look for?" "Yes. They have something like a data chips, I guess. I think I know where to look for ones with the most information." "We can't really afford not to try, can we? Everyone needs..." The chief trailed off. "If everything goes well," Vincent said again. "Aye, God willing," the boy soberly replied. "Guys," Vi said, "you're speaking, not commercial English again." "Sorry, sweetie," Vincent told her, "but it's man talk." End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.